You've probably seen ads on television hailing natural gas as the clean-burning transition fuel.
American shale basins contain an ocean of natural gas.
What I want is to use our resources in America. It's cheaper and it's ours. It's ours.
What would it mean if the United States and the rest of the world adopted natural gas as the fuel of the future?
We've cracked the code for natural gas supply.
And what I didn't know was that the 2005 energy bill pushed through Congress by Dick Chaney exempts the oil and natural gas industries from the Safe Drinking Water Act. They were also exempt from the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Superfund Law, and about a dozen other environmental and democratic regulations. And when the 2005 energy bill cleared away all the restrictions, companies like Encana, Williams, Cabot Oil and Gas, and Chesapeake began to use the new Halliburton technology, and they began the largest and most extensive domestic gas drilling campaign in history, now occupying 34 states. The method of gas drilling they use is called hydraulic fracturing, or fracking. It blasts a mix of water and chemicals 8,000 feet into the ground. The fracking itself is like a mini earthquake. The intense pressure breaks apart the rock and frees up the gas. In order to frack, you need some fracking fluid, a mix of over 596 chemicals, from the unpronounceable to the unknown to the too well-known. The brew is full of corrosion inhibitors, gelants, drilling additives, biocides, shale control inhibitors, liquid breaker aids, viscosifiers, liquid gel concentrates. On the side of that frac fluid truck, it should say, "Just add water." Each time they drill a well, they need between 1 and 7 million gallons of water. Each time they go back and frack an existing well, they need an additional 1 to 7 million gallons of water. They can frack a well up to 18 times in its life. They started out west, New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, Wyoming, Oklahoma, and in the south, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama. 450,000 wells, times 18, times 1 to 7 million gallons, is something like 40 trillion gallons of water, all of it infused with the 596 chemicals in the fracking fluid. And now they're coming east. They're proposing 50,000 gas wells along a 75-mile stretch of the Delaware River and hundreds of thousands more across New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. From 1972 until now, my whole life, all this has been protected.
Let's clear this up. I'm not here under the authority of EPA, speaking on behalf of views that the agency represents.
I will put Weston Wilson not speaking on behalf of the EPA, although he works for the EPA.
In 2004, the EPA was investigating water contamination incidents due to hydraulic fracturing across the country. But a panel rejected the inquiry, stating that although hazardous materials were being injected underground, EPA did not need to investigate. Weston Wilson, a 20-year veteran of the EPA, wrote a letter to Congress objecting. He also noted that on the peer review panel that authored the report, 5 of 7 members appeared to have conflicts of interest and would benefit from the EPA's decision not to conduct a further investigation.
They came out with the patently ridiculous conclusion. They had showed it was toxic and then said it wasn't a risk. It made no sense, and only in an Orwellian world would you accept that.
From 1995 until 2000, when he became vice president, Dick Chaney was the CEO of Halliburton. One of the first things he did when he became vice president was to form what was known as the Energy Task Force. They met up to 40 times with industry leaders. They only met once with members from environmental groups. The Energy Task Force and a $100 million lobbying effort on behalf of the industry were significant in the passage of what's called the Halliburton loophole to the Safe Drinking Water Act, which authorizes oil and gas drillers exclusively to inject known hazardous materials unchecked directly into or adjacent to underground drinking water supplies. It passed as a part of the Bush administration's Energy Policy Act of 2005.
So all science at that point stopped?
All science, all data, everything stopped. we were appalled about burying this kind of, maybe no pun intended, but burying this secret that it was known to be toxic. You know, when the president says to its bureaucracy, don't investigate, expedite things for industry, we do those jobs well too. One could characterize this entire industry as having 100 years of history of purchasing those they contaminate. So they purchase the land, and often with an agreement of secrecy of somebody that's alleging they've been contaminated by oil and gas production. So the industry itself has that type of practice.
You're saying it's the industry itself should be proving it and not the people.
This is America. We shouldn't be assuming that corporations can keep a secret, especially when they're practicing in our backyard. So the onus should be on the industry to prove to the government that their practice is benign, and not that assumption. What you can be picking up from these citizens is what we should be investigating, but we're not. We're still asleep at the wheel. And don't assume since Obama got elected that something's changed at the EPA yet in that regard. Even if it weren't true, they deserve an investigation. They're citizens of the United States. And they certainly don't deserve to be exposed to secret chemicals. It's un-American. So I understand your question and your frustration, and you're seeing how this may be a pattern repeating itself. But so far, we're not on duty. We're not present as a government agency to answer your legitimate questions, and we must be directed to.
The Jonah gas field is at the foothills of the Grand Tetons. Just to the south, Yellowstone Park and the Bridger Teton National Forest. Sublette County, at 4,935 square miles, the county is about the same size as the entire state of Connecticut. The population is about 6,000 people. That means there's about one person per square mile. Much of Sublette County is BLM land, Bureau of Land Management land, our public trust, your land and mine. You can camp anywhere on BLM land because it belongs to you, the public. The BLM's stated mission is to sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of the public lands for the use and enjoyment of present and future generations. The Energy Task Force, headed by Vice President Dick Chaney, asked the BLM in 2001 to find ways to open new federal lands to oil and gas leasing, and in what some call the greatest transfer of public lands to private hands in history, Dick Chaney persuaded the BLM to lease millions of acres to gas companies for exploration and drilling.